Why am I still here? Why do I still have so much more to read? One thing to know about me, I don't know if I've mentioned it enough times, but I love dragons. She doesn't really have a whole lot of life experiences. She's trying to write a romance novel, by the way, and she has no clue. Well, neither did I. Hi, hello, it is finally time for me to tell you about all of the books that I've read so far this year. If you're new here, welcome, thank you for stopping by. I usually do bi-monthly reading wrap-up, so January, February, usually like mid to late March, I'll come out with a reading wrap-up of what I read in January and February, same for March and April, and so on and so forth. Beginning of this year, it just didn't work out for January and February, so I decided to just compile all the books that I read throughout the first 4 months of this year into one video. So here we are. I can finally talk about these books. There are a couple that I've been desperately wanting to share with you guys since I read them. So yeah, I'm really excited to get on into it. Now, starting off with a strong one to kick off my year in January, I made a reading vlog of this, so you can go and check that out. But the first book I read in January of 2026 was The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. Now, this was making the rounds mostly like the end of last year, I think, and I just had a feeling that I was really gonna like it based on the recommendations that people were giving about it, and it did not disappoint. I had a really good time with this book, and it made for a very good way to kick off 2026, my reading year of 2026. So basically what this book is about is that in this world where this book takes place, the emperor is chosen through a trial. The emperor then rules for 24 years, and then the trial takes place again, a new emperor is chosen, and the world goes on, right? In this world there are also 8 guardians, which are basically like spiritual, godlike sort of beings that some people believe exist in this world, but each of the contestants are chosen from one of the 8 monasteries that are dedicated to one of the 8 guardians. I don't remember if I said this, but the guardians are animal gods, they're animal beings. So this book takes place when it is time for another trial. A new emperor needs to be put on the throne, except to kick this trial off, one of the contestants is murdered before the trial has even begun. And in that contestant's place, our main character Nima gets the title of contestant thrust upon her. Now, Nima is an incredibly talented scholar, but she has 0 training for this kind of exam. And not only does she have to try and survive these trials, she also has to solve the mystery of her predecessor's murder. I had, like I said, a really fun time with this book. This is a really great example of an adult fantasy that still keeps like a mostly light-hearted and fun tone throughout the book. Obviously, there are darker themes and plot lines and stuff that we explore in this book, but a kind of core element of this book is the humor. It doesn't dwell on the really heavy side of things to make it more of an adult book, you know? And like I said, the humor, I was laughing out loud multiple times throughout this book. I love Nima. She's mature, she's smart, she uses her scholarly skills to her advantage. She's tough, and she's also really sweet, and I think she's just a really great, well-rounded character. I also loved all of the side characters. I feel like Antonia Hodgson does a really good job at making them all feel really fleshed out and real. The plot is really engaging. We've got the trials, we've got Nima trying to solve the murder mystery. There are a few little plot lines going on in the background as well, so there's a fair few different moving parts that kind of just keep you guessing, keep things moving. It's also not overly heavy on the world building. I did come off of reading The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson and Jade War by Fonda Lee right before reading this book, which they are both mega heavy on the world building, on like the amount of names that you have to remember, and in a loving way. I love both of those series. They are some of my favorites. So I would say for this series, I would say that it's not overly heavy on the world building. I think the concept of like the guardians and that sort of thing is fairly easy to understand. However, the magic in this world is very wishy-washy. I could not describe to you how it works. But like, I wasn't overly bothered by that, and I'm assuming in the second book we're gonna get a little bit more context on how everything works, because to be honest, I don't think Nemo knows how it works. I was really hoping for this to be a 5-star book, but it just didn't quite get there for me. It has a lot of unique elements, but I think the main reason it's not quite a 5-star for me is because it feels like I've read something similar before. Just, I don't know if it's like the trials aspect or, I don't know, it just didn't get to that 5-star point for me, but that doesn't mean I didn't have an absolutely fantastic time, and you should absolutely check it out. Highly, highly recommend. So that was my first read of the year, The Raven Scholar, Antonia Hodgson. Now after that, I had, as I mentioned, just come off into like November, December, I read Jade City, Jade War, and then went straight into The Hero of Ages. That might be wrong, but I read a lot of heavy fantasy, and then I also read The Raven Scholar, which, by the way, is like, she's chunky. I read a lot of chunky books in like one period of time, so I needed something a little bit more fast-paced, lighthearted, quick and easy to read. So because of that, I decided to pick up Daydream by Hannah Grace. This is the 3rd book in the Maple Hills series, which, if you don't know, the first book is Icebreaker. Very infamous, I would say. So Daydream is Henry's book. Henry was one of the side characters, one of the hockey boys from Icebreaker and Wildfire. That's the 2nd book. Now in Daydream, Henry has been given the title of captain after Nate has left and moved on to his big shot hockey career. I don't know, he's gone. All the older guys have graduated, right? Now Henry has very big shoes to fill when it comes to being captain after Nate, and Henry doesn't really want the job. Despite the fact that he does not want this job, he cannot fail at being captain. He cannot let Nate and his team down. And that includes not failing the class that he just got stuck with because he didn't pick his classes because he procrastinated. So now he's in this class that he doesn't understand. The teacher doesn't teach it the way he needs it to be the way he needs it to be teached. Enter Hallie. She is super smart, a really good teacher. She's been tutoring her sister, I think, for like her entire life. And Henry decides to strike up a deal with her for the semester where she will tutor him and kind of reteach him the class so that he can understand what he needs to do. And in exchange, he will help her write the novel that she's been working on. And how he does that is giving her new experiences to write about, because she's an introvert. She doesn't really have a whole lot of life experiences. You know? She's trying to write a romance novel, by the way. I don't know if that was implied. No, it's like really cute. He takes her on like little dates because she just broke up with her really horrid ex-boyfriend. So now she gets to experience like the true romance of a relationship. And it's really sweet, and they are just so adorable. Personally, I enjoyed Icebreaker. She's sitting right there. And I really just like the way people clown on mainly Icebreaker because of the smut. And I think people are kind of missing out on Hannah Grace's writing because, first of all, she writes hilarious banter between all of the characters, but each of her books kind of focuses on a character trait, a past trauma, or love language, or just like the character development of each of the 2 main characters. And in my opinion, she does a really good job at exploring those themes and those traits. And like, yeah, there's not a whole lot of plot in these books, but I think the plot is kind of just exploring these characters and their story. Anyway, that's my little soapbox rant about Icebreaker and the Maple Hills series. I have mentioned this many times before, but I really like when my fictional characters are good at communicating, because otherwise I get really frustrated. That is not the case here. I would say Hallie and Henry even err on the side of like over communication. Again, if you haven't read the series, you're missing out on this group of friends. They feel like a real group of friends. Again, the banter, the text chains, it feels like Hannah Grace has literally just like overheard a group of friends chatting and just been like typing it all up into her book, into a like massive notes list to then put into her books later. Generally is like the best time ever. My only complaint about this book is that I feel like the scenes were all kind of snippets of a day. Like we didn't really get, I just wish the scenes were longer. I felt like we would have a portion of a scene and then it would skip to a next scene rather than like going with the characters, if that makes sense. So yeah, I had a really, really good time with this book. It's just pure serotonin. This is kind of my guilty pleasure series, but to be honest, I don't feel that guilty about it. I just have a good time with it. So yeah, my second read of the year, also an absolute banger, Daydream by Hannah Grace. Okay, third book of January. I always do this. Whenever I have a really good time with a romance novel, I'm like, I need to read another one. Give me the same high that I'm feeling right now. Like, just keep it coming, right? And it just doesn't usually end well. I think I've done this like 2 or 3 times where I have read a romance novel like consecutively, one after the other, and the second one is just, it never hits the same as the first one. So I decided to try and read another hockey romance, even though Daydream isn't really that hockey related. So I decided to pick up Collide by Khabra. This is a hockey romance. Had it in my saved folder in my library app for like a long time, and I just decided to finally pick it up. Okay, Collide. We follow Summer. Sorry, it's just gotten really dark today. It's like really gloomy. The lighting's gonna be all over the place. Collide. We follow Summer after she has been forced to make her college thesis about hockey, which is a sport that she hates. In order to write her college thesis, she's been paired up with Aiden, the hockey team captain. And Aiden is begrudgingly taking on this assignment as punishment after his teammates had a bit of a rowdy party that got a little bit out of control. And just being the amazing team captain that he is, he's taking the hit for his teammates, you know, like a really good guy. First and foremost, this book is way too long. I don't even remember at this point, but the last probably 40%, what was happening? I was like, why am I still here? Why do I still have so much more to read? Initially, I was just kind of like indifferent about this book. I wasn't all that connected to it, and I was just like, it's okay, but I also don't hate it. The longer it went on, the more I hated it. I feel mean because it's not necessarily a bad book. If I hadn't read it directly after Daydream, again, this just always bites me in the butt, but I think I wouldn't have such a skewed opinion of it. The characters in general needed more development, which meant the romance was just kind of flat and boring, and I just didn't like the main characters. Summer was a buzzkill. She was just grumpy. Her only personality trait is being grumpy and mean. And yet Aiden, and I think a lot of the other characters also, constantly like talk about her as if she's like just pure sunshine. Literally, I have written a quote down because this just boggled my mind. No, I didn't write it down on my notes. I have it in my book. Okay, this girl is fucking sunshine embodied and she has no clue. Well, neither did I, because what do you mean? What do you mean? She's like a piece of work to you and everyone else all the time. Aiden, he was alright in the latter half of the book. In the beginning, he was kind of a douche, and I feel like he was just a bit of a knockoff version of Nate Hawkins, not gonna lie. The whole self-sacrificing hockey team captain thing, it was very, very reminiscent of Nate Hawkins. And again, if I hadn't just read Daydream, if I hadn't been in the Maple Hills universe mindset, then I possibly wouldn't think that. It's raining. Sorry if you can hear that in the background, but hopefully it's just ambiance. So yeah, I did not have the best time with this book. I would maybe be willing to give the other books in the series a go. If they have better main characters, then I'd be more inclined to give it a go. But yeah, I just hated Summer. Like, by the end, I could not stand her. So yeah, that was Collide by Khabra. Okay, and the final book that I read in January was Coldwire by Chloe Gong. This released in November of last year, and I just didn't get around to picking it up. This is a sci-fi dystopian novel where there are 2 worlds, upcountry and downcountry. Upcountry is a virtual world. It's the exact same as downcountry, aka the real world. And many people, mostly the rich, obviously live upcountry to escape downcountry, which is essentially our world in the future when like climate change, climate crisis has all taken place. Like, the real world is mostly uninhabitable. There's endless diseases and epidemics, global warming, like I said, climate crisis, and it's not maintained by the government. So yeah, it's not a nice place to live. So most people are living in, like, they plug into these little pods and they live in virtual reality. So we follow 2 point of view characters, Irale, don't know if that's how you pronounce it, who works for Corp, which is basically like the big corporation. If I'm remembering correctly, they created the upcountry, the virtual world, and they're basically an allegory for one of the big companies, and they basically run everything, they own everything, everything belongs to them. Now, her life kind of hits the fan when she gets framed for assassinating a government official and she ends up getting forced to have to work together with her not rival, like this guy that she and her team have been hunting. That sounds bad, but hunting for a while. She ends up having to work with him to escape being imprisoned by Corp, the company that she worked for. Then we have Leah, who is about to graduate from Corp Academy, military academy, and she is being put on her first assignment, except she gets put on this assignment with her arch nemesis, her academic nemesis. They're kind of frenemies, it's a frenemy situation, but it turns out that their assignment is a little bit more than their standard first assignment that most students get. First and foremost, I am a Chloe Gong stan. I love all of these Violent Delights, Foul Lady Fortune books, loves them, eat them up. So I went into this having quite high expectations because there's only been one book. Oh, also Immortal Longings. I love I can't say that quickly. I love Immortal Longings. The only book of hers that I just wasn't super in love with was Vilest Things, but for the most part, I have loved all of her books. So I was expecting to love this. And I was a little bit scared when the first half of this book just wasn't doing it for me. The whole setup of the world building just felt kind of clunky. It felt like it needed some more working through, and it really seemed to take a long time before we actually got into the action. Like, I think it was a good halfway through, maybe more, before I felt like we had really started like moving the plot along properly and that things were happening. And for Chloe's other works, I've always felt an immediate connection and interest in all of her characters, which just didn't happen for this one. In terms of the characters, I kind of only liked Leah and Kieran, her academic rival, when they were bantering together. I really liked their chemistry as characters, but individually, none of the characters really stood out to me. Now, the second half of this book, I actually did really enjoy. Well, I guess maybe not really enjoyed, I just enjoyed it more than the second half. I know the ending I had a fun time with. The action and the pacing just kind of picked up. And of course, Chloe pulled out one of her crazy cliffhanger endings, so everything, like, just shit hit the fan by the ending. So the end of this book was really fun. I had a good time and I got really excited for like what was going to be happening in the next book. But this is supposed to be a trilogy and I'm kind of afraid of that because I just don't feel like with what we were introduced to in this book, it doesn't feel like there's enough to span a trilogy. So I just don't really know where we're going with that. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this book and yeah, what's going to happen with it, but I guess we will have to wait and see. This obviously also contains commentary on AI and like corporate greed and that sort of thing, which I enjoyed, but I think it also wasn't super in depth. I think we could have gone a little bit stronger on that. It felt like a background aspect rather than a foreground aspect, which I think in dystopian and sci-fi books, especially when it's sci-fi dystopian, I feel like commentary on our real world needs to be really prevalent and strong in the plot, at least in my opinion. Yeah, I would say give this a go if you have liked Chloe's writing, if you like sci-fi dystopian books. But yeah, I would just say that keep in mind the first half was not super strong. So yeah, that was a little bit of a disappointment with Coldwire. Last two books of January kind of let me down a little bit. but we move. I then decided to start February with a reread of Percy Jackson. If you live under a rock and you've never heard of this series before, I'm gonna fix that for you right now. Essentially, this is a Greek mythology retelling where we follow our main character, Percy Jackson, the main character to ever exist, by the way, as he discovers that the gods of the Greek myths are actually real and he is, in fact, a demigod. He then goes to this camp Half-Blood, where demigods are trained to fight monsters and survive in the real world because it's really dangerous for them, and to hopefully one day be sent on a quest to earn glory and recognition from their parents. So I'm not going to talk about my reread of the Percy Jackson books throughout this video because I am making a video on my reread of this, so that will be up in the next couple of months. And yeah, you can follow along with me in that video as I discuss my thoughts and feelings and musings about the series, but this is just always a 5-star series for me. This is my favorite series of all time. They're so precious to me. So yeah, I had a good time rereading this. So I read The Lightning Thief quickly and I thought it would be the same for The Sea of Monsters, but it actually took me a really long time to get through The Sea of Monsters, which funnily enough happened the last time I tried rereading it, and I was on track to only read one book in February, so I was not a fan of that. So I decided to listen to the audiobook of Rogue Protocol by Martha Wells, which is the 3rd book in the Murderbot Diaries series. And all the books in this series are novellas. The audiobooks are literally 3 hours long. Like, they're just nuggets of books. Super quick to get through and super fun and engaging. And in the 3rd book, we kind of go back to the story that takes place in book 1, kind of like working our way back to it, I feel like. But if you haven't heard of the Murderbot Diaries before, we follow Murderbot, who is a security unit or robot who has hacked its governor module, like its programming, so that it doesn't have to follow orders, because all it wants to do, all day, every day, all it wants to do is to watch reality TV and movies and just like bad sci-fi soap operas and not get bothered by annoying humans. So it still behaves as though it's a, regular schmegular sec unit, but in reality, after it's finished following orders, it just goes to its little hidey hole and watches the hundreds of thousands of hours of downloaded content in its hard drive and just chills out until it gets assigned this mission to protect a group of scientists who are actually like kind of nice people. And like, what happens if it like enjoys spending time with them and they like really like Murderbot and kind of want to keep it around? And what happens if it has to protect them because someone is trying to kill them? I feel like I repeat the same thing every single time I read one of these books. It's just short and sweet and it's fun. It's got a lot of like kind of awkward humor, or like dry and awkward humor. Murderbot hates interacting with humans. It is so antisocial, and it's just really entertaining to watch Murderbot as it like tries to talk to people and blend in. The world building isn't clunky or confusing. It's like so easy to understand, and it feels like it paints a really well-rounded image of the world, even though they're such short books and we don't really get into like meaty world building content. And I feel like the core of the series is that the concept of like humanity and like what it means, especially with Murderbot being an AI robot. It just brings up a lot of questions on that topic. And yeah, there's like a lot of heart at the core of the series, and I really enjoy reading it every single time I pick up a new book. So yeah, that was Rogue Protocol by Martha Wells, and that was only 2 books in February. Kind of slacking, but it's fine. They were good ones, so we'll let it be. Now moving on to March, I finished The Sea of Monsters after reading it through like most of February. Again, I won't talk about the Percy Jackson rereads in this video because there will be a whole video about it. Sea of Monsters shenanigans. Of course, I had a great time. So, Sea of Monsters, and then I picked up To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Moniquill Blackgoose. I need everyone to read this immediately. Oh my god, it was so good. It was so good. Let me tell you what it's about. This is a YA fantasy which takes place in a world during a sort of, I think like Industrial Revolution-esque time period. And it's essentially a fictionalized version of Indigenous Americans that were invaded and colonized by the British, or in this case, the English. And we follow Anarchus, a young Indigenous woman that has been chosen by a dragon, the kind of which is native to the islands and hasn't been seen in generations. Now, of course, the English are very particular about who gets to bond with dragons, and of course they're very displeased to discover that a random young Indigenous girl has been just willy-nilly bonding with some dragon that showed up, right? Now sadly, Anarchus's people have lost their knowledge of dragons and how to cultivate their dragon's power. Whoa, little pigeons just landed right outside my window. So to one, prevent the English from maybe possibly killing her dragon and, I don't know, doing God knows what to her and her family, and to learn how to manage her dragon's power, she decides to enroll in the English Dragon Academy on the mainland. Well, she doesn't really decide to, she kind of doesn't have a choice if she wants to keep Casaqua. So yeah, I adored this book. I genuinely had such a good time. One thing to know about me, I don't know if I've mentioned it enough times on this channel, but I love dragons. They are everything to me. Any book that involves dragons, it's instantly getting bumped up a star because they are my holy grail. I just, are you kidding me? Please, can dragons exist? I want one with a dragon. I may be afraid of heights. It's fine. It would be fine. It'd be different on a dragon, you know? God, I have so many notes about this book and I'm not gonna be able to fit them in this video. I really, really loved Anarchus as a main character. She's, I believe, 15, but she's very mature, very emotionally intelligent, and also a very logical thinker, which I love. As I've mentioned, I get really frustrated when characters are just dumb. And they're just like allergic to logical thinking or emotional maturity. This was just a breath of fresh air because everything Anarchus was saying, I was like, yes, girl, this is making sense to me. You are speaking my language. After reading through some reviews, I think a lot of people said that the dragons weren't really a main aspect of this book, which I understand, but in the first book, Casaqua is just a baby. Like, Anarchus can't actually do a whole lot with her because she can't be ridden, obviously. She's still growing. And because she's so young, she can't really use her powers yet. So for the most part, this book is about the themes of colonialism, racism, and oppression that Anarchus, her people, and the other Indigenous people in the area face from the English. And personally, I loved the way Moniquill Blackgoose talked about these topics. I feel like there are so many fantasies where these kinds of topics should be a forefront of the book because there are so many fantasy tropes that kind of revolve around war and colonizing another country, another country, and another group of people, and it's just not mentioned like at all. And maybe that's on me, maybe I'm not reading the types of books that I should be reading, but I really appreciated how nuanced the discussion in this book was, and especially how each of the characters were affected by the racism and colonialism and how they all handle it in different ways. Anarchus is very bold and she just kind of goes on with life the way she normally would, and doesn't really care about like the English proper way of things. She is proud of her culture and her identity, and she doesn't really care if that makes the people around her uncomfortable. Anarchus's brother wants to learn from the English so that he can take their technology back to the islands, and so he's kind of living in like basically under their rules and being oppressed and kind of living in like a really horrible apartment and living and working a terrible job. And Anarchus's father does not want anything to do with the English, so he really doesn't like that both of his kids have decided to kind of, I guess, conform in some way to the English, and he's very closed off to any English related things. I saw also a lot of people saying that it was kind of annoying how this book like was repetitive in saying like the English ways are bad and like these are bad people, the Naquisite way of life makes sense, it's the better way of life. And I understand that because it was definitely very in your face, but I think that's kind of the point. Like, people can still read books like this, people can still consume media, people can still listen to others who are constantly putting all these facts just like out on the table and laying it all out and constantly proving to you like the reality of our world and racism and like all the things that are involved in it, and people just still don't understand. People refuse to understand, people just can't comprehend it. So I think it's kind of the point. We kind of need it to be so plainly laid out for us like that, so blatantly like thrown in your face, so that it actually like gets into that noggin that people don't tend to use that much these days. Anyway, I really love the complexities of the relationship dynamics between Anarchus and the other main characters and her friends and her family. I'll get into it more when I talk about the second book, but I really especially loved the relationship dynamic between Anarchus and her roommate, Marta. And yeah, I loved this book. I loved the author's writing style and dragons, and yeah, just everything about this. I just had a really good time. I'm kind of torn. I feel like this is a 5-star, but at the same time, I don't know if it's like 4.75, 5-star. I can't decide, so yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe I'll leave it at a 4.75 at the moment, and we might come back to it, but this was so brilliant. Genuinely my favorite book of the year so far. Now, I wanted to jump straight into the second book in that series, To Ride a Rising Storm. However, it was not available. Devastated, truly. So I decided to pick up Starshipped by Sebastian. I'm not sure when exactly this came out, but it was very recently, either this year or late last year. I think this year though. Now, this follows our main character Simon. He is like a snobby, kind of mean, rude actor on a somewhat mediocre and long-running sci-fi TV soap opera. Initially, he thought this gig was going to be like a temporary thing, like a short stint before he gets into like some more serious stuff, but it's going on a decade and he's still in the same place. And he's had enough. He's fed up. He's over it. He wants to get out of this show. He wants to start doing some more diverse roles. He also wants to get the heck away from his co-star, his insufferable co-star, Charlie. They have been rivals since day one. Charlie kind of showed up to set the first season and was just a mess. Simon straight up thinks Charlie is like trashy, and he doesn't do a whole lot to hide his feelings in that regard. So they've just wrapped the last season that they filmed, and Simon has decided that he won't be coming back to the next season. The problem is he and Charlie's dislike for each other is very well known, and Simon will probably cop a lot of bad press for leaving the show. And so to do some preemptive damage control, Simon accompanies Charlie on a road trip where they discover that working together for so many years, big shock, they might actually be friends. They might actually know a lot about each other. And who knows, like maybe Charlie's hot. Sewer man. I have only read one other Sebastian book, which I really enjoyed. And I was so intrigued by this premise when I first saw it, because I love reading about like actors, and acting on a sci-fi set, especially like a soap opera sci-fi, sounds so fun. So as soon as it popped up on my library app, I snatched that up. I love this. Simon is antisocial and anxious and has OCD and is kind of a disaster. I adored him. Technically, he's also like really rude, but he's also really funny when he's rude, so that was just a great time. Charlie was really great. I think he had a really interesting backstory that we got to explore, and he started off the show when he was going through a really rough time in his life, which we kind of learn over the course of the book, and we see the things that he did to change his behavior and become an actually good person. And like, Simon was maybe being a bit clouded by his first perception of him, and that Charlie actually relates to Simon in a lot of ways, but he kind of hides that a lot better. He masks a lot better than Simon does. I just love the way that Sebastian writes relationships, and the way that her characters like really understand what the other needs. This did lean a little too far into Simon and Charlie being terrible at communicating with one another for my liking. There was a portion of the book where I was just like, pick up the phone, pick up the damn phone, like, oh my god. But it's kind of excusable in my opinion, because they have real reasons for why they are the way they are. Oh my god, also one, like probably maybe my favorite aspect of this book, there were excerpts from a fan Discord for this show that they like act on, and I loved it. It was like little snippets where the fans in the Discord would be discussing like the actors in real life, and like the photos that would come out about them, and being like, guys, I don't think we should like discuss their personal lives. Like that's just kind of like icky. I don't like that. They were doing character analysis. They were discussing how they were discussing how the way the writers wrote certain parts of the show and like how that just didn't make sense, and like they should have written it this way and this show would have been so great. It would have been like the show of all time. It would have been one to go down in history if they'd gotten the writing right. And I was like, I'm home. I loved it. It was such an accurate representation of being a fangirl and being in like fandom communities. It was just so fun reading them, and I wanted to exist in this world where the show is real. I wanted to watch the show. So yeah, it was just a really fun time and I really enjoyed it. But I would say that like be wary if you don't like miscommunication or characters who don't communicate, because it does get a little bit frustrating at times. But in saying that, I hate when characters cannot communicate, and I still managed to love this book. So yeah, Starshipped by Sebastian. And then we are on to April, the last two books that I'm going to be talking about in this video. Started off April To Ride a Rising Storm, the second book, the follow-up to Shape a Dragon's Breath, became available on my library. Thank the Lord. Oh my god, I was so happy to be back in this world, and it had literally been like 2 weeks maybe. Just pure joy. I loved this series. I'm so excited for it to continue. But yeah, To Ride a Rising Storm. There has been, due to some events in To Shape a Dragon's Breath, the first book, there has been a significant change in attitude towards Indigenous people and a significant rise in volatile behavior and like rallying and hate speech and just general despicable behavior. And so the environment has worsened significantly for Anarchus and Theod, who I didn't mention in the first book, but he is the only other Indigenous character that goes to the Dragon Academy that Anarchus goes to. I would say in this book there's not like a clear plot outside of the political struggle that is going on kind of in the background. We only see like portions of it because Anarchus gets to be present for a few like elections, and so it's that aspect of the book is kind of building in the background as we mainly focus on Anarchus and her relationships with her friends and her struggles at school and more of her like emotional problems that she's facing. Now, one thing I didn't love about the second book, I don't know if it's the same in the first book and I just didn't notice it because I was having a really good time, but in the second book we sit in on a lot of classes and we like fully experience the lecture along with Anarchus. We also get like a full scientific breakdown of how their magic works in coordination with their dragons. And I love that it's a different sort of magic system than typical fantasies have, but I just don't have a scientific brain. So like they were explaining things and I just, you know, so there was like paragraphs full of like scientific explanations, which I just didn't really get. And we'd spend like a whole chapter in a classroom and yeah, kind of had my attention lagging a little bit. We get a few new characters in this book, which I really, really loved, especially Yadi. I want to say it's pronounced Yadi, who is a new female Dragoneer. We have now 3 female Dragoneers. I also saw in reviews for the first book that Anarchus was like too perfect, quote unquote. She always had the moral high ground. She was always really patient. A lot of people said she didn't have a whole lot of consequences to her actions. In some ways, I felt that in the first book, but I think we're like slowly having it be addressed, I want to say over the course of the rest of the series, but it starts in the second book. Anarchus gets pulled up a couple times on her attitude, especially towards her English friends and customs. Not only English customs, but I feel like customs of other people and ways of life. Now this is where I want to talk about Marta and Anarchus, because Marta is an English girl. She's like prim and proper. She's been raised to exist in proper society and be, you know, a nice, polite young lady with all the correct English views and manners and whatnot. She is, I think, she's well-meaning, but because she's like so English, she unintentionally insults, well, also sometimes intentionally, insults Anarchus on like a number of occasions. She has obviously prejudices to work through, but at her core, Marta is a nice person. She's a good person, and she just needs to be educated on her view of the world and certain people, and she just needs time to learn that sort of thing, right? And so throughout this book, Anarchus kind of has to have her other friends explain to her. Anarchus might have to be a little bit patient because she is quite impatient in this book. She might have to be a little bit more patient in waiting for Marta to come around and learn a different viewpoint. She also gets pulled up by one of her friends that's a maid, because Anarchus really disregards proper society and like having a good reputation, making sure to wear the correct things to the correct occasions, making good connections. Anarchus doesn't see value in any of it, and her friend pulls her up because she's in a kind of unique situation where she does actually have the ability to change her, I guess, like her standing in life, whereas this maid, her friend, doesn't. So she's kind of in the second book learning to be a little bit more flexible, I feel like. I was so sucked into this book that the ending kind of took me by surprise. I didn't realize I was at the end until like things were happening, and it was kind of like a big explosive ending. So I am just like chomping at the bit for book 3. No idea when it's coming out, but I will be ready and waiting when it does, because yeah, this is just a brilliant series. I really love the way Moniquill Blackgoose writes, the themes that she explores, her characters, like everything. I just love it. And we did get more dragons in the second book, so rest assured. Okay, final book of the video. This is the last book that I read in April, and it's actually, I read it throughout kind of the entirety of April. It took me basically a month to read this book. And I, again, only read 2 books in April, but it's fine. We do what we can. Anyway, that book that I read was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Very popular at the moment. The movie just came out. Well, the movie came out like the beginning of April, I think, but I wanted to read the book beforehand. If you haven't heard of this book, Project Hail Mary follows Ryland Grace, who has just awoken on a spaceship in the middle of space, millions of light years away from Earth. Why is he in space? He has no idea. That's for us to find out together. Why can he not remember anything of him? He can't even remember his name. He can't remember what he does for a living. Why does he not remember anything? He has no idea. That's for us to find out together. Wow, it just got really, really dark. Hopefully you can still see me. I loved the writing style when it came to Ryland's thought patterns, way of thinking, his humor, his inner monologue. It was just like really, I mean, you can feel the ADHD like just leaking off the page. No, I think it's more like his excitement for science. It was just like contagious. And I feel like the way we're kind of like drip fed information throughout the book of like, until we get the full picture of what this mission is, how Ryland came to be on this mission, all that sort of thing. And I feel like the way that's done is just really, really well done. And it just keeps you intrigued throughout the whole book. Unfortunately, I think my head was just not in the game last month for reading this book. So again, it took me the entire month to read this. Very slow journey. And I do think partially it has to do with the amount of science talk in this book. Yeah, that was a lot. I think especially towards the end, I just kind of got a bit tired of how much we discuss science. Again, it's just not my thing. Overall, the plot as a whole is very engaging. The relationship dynamic between Ryland and our other main character, Rocky, is just really sweet and fun and hilarious. And yeah, it's just like a really beautiful book, and it is really engaging. I've heard people say that you should listen to the audiobook if you can, which I would probably recommend just for like the science aspect of things, because if you're reading through like a page full of scientific breakdown then, and you're not sciencey, then like you might have the same issue as me. But yeah, I just had a really good time with this, and I think honestly the peak experience was spending a month in this book and on this journey with Grace and Rocky, and then going immediately to watch the movie. It was just a really good time. So that was Project Hail Mary, the last book I read in April, and they are all the books that I read so far this year in the first 4 months of this year. For the most part, we've had a good time. I've not been reading as much as I would like, unfortunately, but hopefully we can pick it up a little bit more from this point onwards, because as always, there are so many books that I would love to read. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. That is all I have for you today. Let me know your top book that you've read, your favorite book that you've read so far this year. Let me know in the comments below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some recommendations out of this video. Definitely check out, if you want to pick up anything from this video, please check out To Shape a Dragon's Breath. Thank you again so much for watching. My Instagram, my Storygraph, my Goodreads, and my Ko-fi are all linked below if you want to check them out and support me. That would be very much appreciated. And if you like this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.